Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 7th and 8th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline Comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam! Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, folks. We are here tonight, Silverline Wednesday Wham, and I am hostessing tonight, so God help us all. We are, for you newbies who are just popping in for the first time, my name is Barb Kelberg. I'm an inker of over 3 decades, a writer and colorist of only 2 years, and the creator of Divinity. With me is our own Brent Larson. He's the creator of Kalis in Cape Town and a screenwriter. And our special guest tonight, we're very honored to welcome the award-winning writer, creator in TV, films, and comics, Madeleine Holly-Rosing. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. And excuse the gloves, it's snowing in Los Angeles.
Oh, I live in Wisconsin, so I think,
yeah, I know, but for us, it's
like snow. I heard of that.
I know.
Well, aren't you out west?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I'm in Florida, Orlando.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Sorry about that.
Yeah. No, it's kind of interesting. I went out to get the dogs, and I'm like, what just fell on me? I'm like, what?
What is this white stuff?
What is this?
Oh my God.
And I used to live in New York. I've lived in snow. I lived in New York and in New Jersey for quite a while. So yeah, I've lived in it. So I know what it's like. But, being out here in California, in Southern California in particular, it's not your normal day.
Mm-hmm. Is there a lot of drivers who've never experienced it and they're like afraid to go on the streets because there's crazy people out there now?
Well, that just happens when it rains.
I was going to say it's LA. You don't really want to get on the road anyway. So
yeah, rain here is problematic with drivers because they just continue speeding and then hydroplane, and then that's a problem. But most of the snow that falls here, it doesn't stick. It's pretty much gone unless you're up in the like the Burbank Hills or some, and then it stayed for like a day and then it went away. So it's very odd, but the mountains look beautiful. I'm actually not complaining because we need the water.
Yes.
So no one is complaining. It's like, okay, just, we don't care. Just snow, rain, whatever.
Yeah. Help the drought.
Tidal
Very,
wave.
very happy. And I just feel badly for those who are in the burn areas.
Yes.
Then they're subject to mudslides, and
Right.
they have to be really careful. So, yeah.
Hi, here's our wonderful colorist, Roberta Conroy, joining us. Thank you for
Nice
popping
to
in,
meet you.
Roberta.
Nice
We're
to
going to
see
get
you.
the hour started off. Madeleine is also the award-winning writer of the Boston Metaphysical Society, which I have read and I really enjoy it. And
Oh, thank you.
I wanted to ask you, how did you come up with the whole concept for Boston Metaphysical Society? Where did that start?
Well, I have it started while I was at UCLA Film School. I have an MFA in screenwriting. And while I was there, my last year, I did a TV track. And I've always loved history. I'm a huge history buff, and I love science fiction. So kind of merging them became steampunk. But even before that, the original idea of this was not a steampunk idea. I think I had originally come up with a idea for a pilot, a TV pilot called like 1900 Detective Agency. It was sort of like Mulder and Scully, but in the late 1800s. So they wouldn't have, all the fancy gadgets. Everything would be analog. Because as a writer, and particularly when you're doing comics, it's a lot easier to explain science and gadgets when you can see the actual gears turning, and it's just easier to explain to an audience. And I had a friend who was also in the development class with me, who suggested that I turn it into develop it as a steampunk world. And at the time, I had heard of steampunk, wasn't that familiar with it. So I did some research, and he was absolutely right. So I redeveloped it, and I said, well, it needs a title that evokes the time period. And so I went through a bunch. I mean, I had lists and cross-referencing names, and finally came up with Boston Metaphysical Society, because societies or groups or clubs, that's what they were called back then in the late 1800s. And I was using the term metaphysical as more supernatural and paranormal, unlike today, which is when you say metaphysical, people think of more of a philosophical kind of concept. And so, yeah, everything is, the definitions were from that day and not the present. And though it's a mouthful, and as I have like this, a URL that goes on forever, it was really the right name for the project. So it stuck. So yeah, it was originally a TV pilot I wrote at UCLA Film School.
Well, I noticed that the characters that you have brought in, Alexander Graham Bell, Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, and Harry Houdini, very, very clever little acronym there, Beth. How much research did you do into the real personalities behind there? Because I know Tesla was a very eccentric and arrogant character, and I see some of that bleeding through into your writing. Yes. I don't know if he was violent or anything, but he certainly was egotistical and liked to talk a good game.
Yeah, he had a very obsessive personality.
Yes.
And so being that this is fiction, I don't hold that everything has to be absolutely correct from the time period.
Sure.
But what I did want to do is thematically retain who these people were. Like, as you've probably read, Tesla and Edison did not get along, and they do not get along in the comic.
They had a famous rivalry. I know that.
Oh yeah. And what you and possibly your audience may not realize, that Granville T. Woods, who is part of the Boston Metaphysical team, is also a historical figure.
No, I did not realize.
He is an African-American scientist from the same time period. He knew Edison, there is no evidence that he ever knew Tesla or Houdini. And Houdini I brought in as for his humanistic qualities, not for his scientific abilities. But fun story about Granville is that he actually the real Granville sued Edison for stealing some of his patents because, well, that's what Edison did. And Granville won.
Oh, wow. Because I know he did the same to Tesla.
Yeah, he did the same to Tesla. And then Edison offered Granville a job, which he refused, and he started his own business in upstate New York with his brother. He actually came from Ohio, but being the writer, I brought him to Boston because, well, I can do that, and made him part of the team. And it's been really interesting, developing around, having him there and bringing out to the world a little known African American scientist. And every once in a while, I'll run across someone who has never, met him or heard of him before, or has, who has heard of him, and that's usually a surprise because he got pretty much buried away in history. So I've had fun bringing him back.
That is fascinating. I did not realize that, and I find that extremely good to bring up historical figures like that have been forgotten.
Yeah, the rest of the team are all fictional. Samuel, Caitlin, and the newest member, Alma, are all fictional.
Now, I see that you have, Samuel's a detective, Caitlin's a medium, Granville's a scientist. I haven't met Alma yet. I'm not that far into the series. What does she bring?
Alma was originally an accountant, but she's an amateur inventor and scientist in her own right. And with her in dealing with Caitlin as they become friends and eventually work together, is we get to see her practice the scientific method, and which brings some grounding to the series as we see her work with Caitlin and her abilities to try to quantify them. And you actually meet Alma in the second sequel called The Spirit of Rebellion. That's where she's introduced. And that will be in the Kickstarter, that will be in volume 2, where I compile all the, there we go. That has all the standalone sequels in it, volume 2. And that has a wonderful cover by Marguerite Savage.
Oh, yes.
It's beautiful.
She's an awesome artist. Do you have some questions,
yes.
Brent?
Actually, I really enjoyed your work. I'm curious how you found your artists.
I was going to ask that too.
Oh, yeah, my artist. Yes, that's always interesting. My first artist for the original 6-issue miniseries was Emily Hugh. And after almost a year-long search, I found her through a mutual friend. And the friend I had met, I was taking a sequential art class at UCLA, and she says, oh, I've met this girl online. She's just graduated from art school. I think she might be good for you. And so I hired her to audition and gave her 2 pages to do, and Emily nailed it. And so I brought her on to do the 6-issue miniseries, and bless her heart, she got it done. She stayed with me, and we got it done. And I can't say things more wonderful enough about Emily. But then when we finished that, she of course wanted to move on. She's actually has been doing storyboards for Marvel and Nickelodeon and moved on with her life. And by that time I'd been in the indie comic community for a few years. So I was able to put the word out that I was looking for another artist. And another friend of mine through the steampunk community said, hey, I think Gwen Tavares might be good for you. And I said, great, can I, give me your email. Let me look her up and check out her portfolio. But then Gwen contacted me, and I looked at her stuff. I said, this is great. Let's go for it. And so Gwen did the art and the coloring for the 4 standalone sequels. And then when we finished off the Book of Demons, Gwen needed to take a step back because, well, she has 2 children under the age of 3.
Wow.
That should tell you all you need to know.
Been there, done that. Don't wish to ever do it again.
Yeah.
Because I have grandkids now, so I can spoil them and send them home. But
yes. So yeah, I'm the auntie, so I can like go play and then hand them back, and we're all good.
Vic asks if this is already fully funded.
Not quite. We're about 80% funded.
And we have 29 days to go. So yes, people.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah,
find this. You will not be sorry.
This looks fantastic.
Yeah, we launched this morning around 11:15, something like that.
Well, just this morning.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Holy cow.
Okay. So
nice job.
A full month.
Yeah, this is not my first rodeo.
Oh, yes, I know.
You should write a book. Oh,
I did.
You see this? This is a well-thumbed, and yes, this is a well-thumbed book. I've had it for several years. And
there's actually a new
highlighted.
There's actually a new edition out.
Oh yeah, there's highlighted bits in there. This is for me invaluable. Silverline has had 23 Kickstarters, and 22 of them have been successful.
Great.
And so I live and die by this book. And I have a couple of questions about Kickstarting that I'd like to ask. And how do you, between Kickstarters, how long is your period of time usually between Kickstarters?
As long as possible. These are exhausting.
Yeah.
I try to keep them about a year apart. This year may be different because if things move along with my new artist, Elizabeth Makedza, what I wanted to do was run a Kickstarter in the fall for issues 3 and 4 to finish it up so people have the complete series, and instead of waiting too long. But it really depends on how quickly she gets things done, whether or not I have to push it over to next year or not. I don't like crowdfunding during the holidays. It's more stress than anyone needs, and people are, they're busy with other stuff. They're traveling,
and they don't have the money. They're spending their money on holidays.
Yeah, and who needs that kind of stress? So I do try, if I can, a year, anywhere from 6 months to a year. I do prefer to fulfill a Kickstarter before we launch the next one, and 'cause that's a whole other thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
How do you manage though to keep up the energy and interest in between campaigns?
I do a lot of cons, and so in between I'm doing that, and I'm fairly active on social media and talking to people. So that doesn't seem to be a problem. Someone reminded me that last year was our 10th anniversary for Boston Metaphysical Society. So I have a pretty good retention rate for backers, and which I can't thank them enough, because without the backers, Boston Metaphysical wouldn't exist.
Yes, I noticed that the last 2 Kickstarters that you did, you had between 900 and 1,000 backers for both.
Correct.
Your pre-launch list before this last one launched was like 350 followers just waiting for you to push the button. And I'm curious how you were able to keep those guys. Do you like put out a monthly newsletter or anything?
Yes, I do have a monthly newsletter. When we're not running a Kickstarter, I will do a monthly Kickstarter update, just letting know people, what I'm doing. Because there's some people who don't want newsletters. And I get that. I understand. It's overwhelming, even though mine is just once a month. So it's not, won't make you crazy. So yeah, I do that once a month, and then I'll do just a Kickstarter once a month saying what's going on. Because I know a lot of people were interested. I don't know if you know this, but I was hired to write a series for Lady Mechanica.
I saw that.
I like that series.
And so yeah, people are, obviously there's a cross demographic there. So people are very interested in, how that was going. And so I'd keep them updated on that, along with what's going on with Boston Metaphysical and what we were doing. So there's a pretty steady stream of contact about once a month.
Vic says that's better than a lot of people. There are a lot of Kickstarters that you still haven't gotten your books for 4 years later. Vic, that's one of the reasons why Silverline always has their books done before we kickstart. But you do find creators like Madeleine that are very dependable. They're going to turn out the product. That if you pay for it, you're going to have it in your hands.
Yeah, I like to think that people have trust in me because I've been doing this for 10 years now, and we've delivered on every single Kickstarter.
And that's what you need. You need a good reputation, and you have it. They know that you're dependable.
Yeah, there was a young lady who messaged me just last week, and she said, she goes, I finally got around to letting you know that, I got my package, but it was missing the physical rewards. And I'm like, well, that's the first time that's happened in over 1,000 packages, but okay, sure. Packaged them up, mailed them out day before yesterday, and make sure she got it. And, it's not that tough. You have to go do it.
When you think about your, basically your groundswell, I'm curious, can you remember back to 10 years ago, your first Kickstarter, and how many backers you had for that?
Oh yeah, the memory is painful.
Okay.
The reason being is our very first Kickstarter, we had finished the first 3 issues of our original 6-issue miniseries, and at that point we were self-funded at that point, and Kickstarter had really just started to become a thing. And so I thought to myself, I said, okay, we need money to finish the next 3 issues, and then we can put it in a trade. We'll do this all in one Kickstarter. We'll finish the 3 issues, put it in a trade, because that's actually ultimately it's going to be cheaper for people, right? So it was about for $25,000, because that's what it was going to cost for the 3 issues and printing, and we're talking about a 156-page trade and art and everything. Well, it became clear that we were not going to make that. We were just too new. People didn't know us. I came in with a lot of naivete and didn't really understand enough about Kickstarter and how to crowdfund at that time. But the good part is that we had over 200 people pledged to it. And my husband and I were talking, and it's like, okay, we can bring in at least 200 people, and it was about $7,000. So it's okay, this is what we can start with. So we canceled it right before the end and said, okay, we're going to regroup. We're going to do this an issue at a time, and we'll be back, first of the year. And so we were able to, keep all those people, contact all that 200 some odd through Kickstarter. And also I asked them to get on my email list and promised that I would only send them stuff about the Kickstarter. And so that was the beginning of my teeny tiny little email list, was from that 10 years ago. And then we relaunched, I think in January, for like a $3,000 goal to print issue number 3. And we were fully funded in 24 hours.
We had a similar experience. Our one failed Kickstarter, we saw where it was going and we canceled it, reassessed, and relaunched it.
Yeah, Yeah, I just think it's important that when you do decide to cancel, that you don't relaunch too quickly. Even though you may have the plan in your head, other people may not think, oh, it hasn't been enough time for them to think about what they're going to do. So for me, it's like, okay, give it about a month. So people think, they haven't forgotten you, but you've given people the impression that you have time to think about how you're going to redo this.
I think it was like 2 months.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. And then relaunch and you're good to go. And keep the goal modest. And then everything, we funded everything after that.
Yeah, Roland says we had 2 months between our cancellation and our
perfect.
relaunch.
Yeah, that's perfect because, I've seen creators who are like, oh, okay, this isn't working, cancel, and then the next week they relaunch, and
Maybe
I'm like,
people change their minds.
And then I look at their Kickstarter, I'm like, you didn't really think about this, and so yeah, you need to have time to assess exactly what's going on and look at what's possible historically.
Roland asks, are there any suggestions on how to keep the retention numbers strong?
Produce good material.
Yeah, there's always that.
Well, and I was going to add and kind of harken back to my last question. So you started out with 200 followers and a small enough goal that you could actually attain it. And now your Kickstarters are quite a bit more, and you've got a ton more followers. So from 10 years ago to now, you did something that actually made those numbers go up probably pretty steadily. So what do you attribute that to?
Consistency and not overplaying my presence on Kickstarter. When I do a Kickstarter, it's more like it's an event because I haven't been on Kickstarter for a year. And so it's like, okay, Boston Metaphysical is back, and we have, we're doing some cool new things this time. We have variant covers for the first time. We have metal covers for the first time. And because I'm experimenting with some new things to see how they go.
Yeah, we're there too.
Yeah.
So going back to you're talking about doing the monthly newsletter, and like some people don't appreciate it. How do you walk the fine line between overdosing people on info, and this is during a Kickstarter, overdosing them on exposure, but on the other side, you want them to have enough to draw them in. It's a really fine line to walk.
Hard.
Yes, it is. And I'm on 11 different social media platforms. It's insane. But I try to only post like twice a day to those. And still, I feel like I'm pissing some people off, like, all right, shut up already. How do you walk that line?
Well, I don't post about Boston Metaphysical all the time. If I do, it's probably only once a week. My social posts are more of like, presenting yourself as a human being and posting cool things. And like my Facebook, my personal page and my comic page are very different, and they're both curated. And the Boston Metaphysical comic page will have all sorts of interesting things from fashion to tea to, all sorts of kinds of things that
sort of things.
Yeah, that people would like, that are in the demographic that I'm selling to, basically.
That's a cool idea.
And then my personal page, I may get a little more political, but not overtly so. I mean, it's not screaming in your face, but you're going to get the gist. But it's also posts about women in science. Cool articles at my friends, or just even, eye-rolling posts like I did today. It was like, if you look on my personal page, it'll say, okay, I've only been live for 2 hours, I'm already getting hit by scammers, spammers on Twitter.
I'm definitely going to have to separate my personal page and make a professional page just devoted to divinity.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
she needs her own.
Separation. You need to have separation there.
Yeah.
And
That's going to be my next step.
but the Boston Metaphysical page is definitely, it is curated for that demographic and the fun things that they want and they like and are interested in. And so
you keep it interesting.
You keep it interesting.
Come back.
Yeah. And as Barbara Dillon from Fanbase Press tells people, you have to think about social media as if you're at a cocktail party. You don't want to always be talking about yourself.
Very cool. That can sort of be I don't know if you've ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Andrew Carnegie.
I know of it. I haven't read it.
Yeah, he says the same thing. People want to talk about themselves. They don't want to listen to you talk about yourself. So that's a really good book to read. Brent, do you have any questions?
You mentioned, Madeleine, a little while ago, women scientists, and I see that theme running throughout your book too. How did that become kind of something that you were interested in?
Well, my father was an engineer, and I had always had an interest in science growing up, though I didn't have an aptitude for it. And well, I married a rocket scientist, so that should tell you something. But no, I've always had an interest in science and history, and a friend of mine once called me a Renaissance woman. I enjoy a wide breadth of interests. And so yeah, it's like you'd mentioned, Barb, that you'd been in comics for 30 years. I've actually been in comics, really, for a little over 10 years, and that was almost by accident.
Mine was too. Basically, I backed into it.
Yeah, which is interesting because my brother has probably the largest graded collection of Daredevil comics in the country. He's one of the top. Wow. And I had no interest in those. Superheroes never interested me at all. And it wasn't until the TV pilot had made some rounds and people said, like, yeah, this is cool. It should find a home, but not quite here. And it was expensive to make back then. And so someone suggested that I turn it into a graphic novel and use that as marketing material to sell back to Hollywood.
You've been a successful screenwriter there too for a while too, right?
Yeah, and I went and did that, but something interesting happened in this journey of mine. I discovered that, one, I really like writing comics, and I adore the indie comic creator community. Yes. And so I said, I'm here. This is my happy place.
Well, we're happy to have you. Trust us. We are completely dedicated to the indies. We think indies is where it's at.
Well, they're just so much more interesting. I mean, when I started taking my sequential art class so I could actually learn how to write comics, I was introduced to stories I had never known existed before, which kind of pissed me off because they were so good and no one had bothered to tell me about it before.
Yeah.
Such as?
Astro City, Why the Last Man, and then later on, excuse me?
Strangers in Paradise?
I have not read that.
Oh, you have to.
I have not read that. And then later on, things like, Lady Killer. And, my husband's not a big graphic novel person, but every once in a while I'll find one. I'll go like, no, you're going to like this one. So I gave him Lady Killer. He's like, I love this.
Good, a new convert.
So I pick and choose for him very carefully, and usually I get it right, and then he enjoys it.
Is there a specific process that you use in your writing? As you can see behind Brent, all those Post-it notes, that's his writing process. He's also a screenwriter and comic book writer.
Process today.
I like the Post-it notes. That's cool.
Yeah, I like the Post-it notes.
Very tactile.
Yeah, I usually just do breakdowns on a page in Word.
See, the problem I have is how much of your eyes we use on the computer. It is kind of nice, I think. Take it off once in a while.
Yeah, I have some author friends who do everything handwritten, and I can't do that. That would just make me insane, because for one, I can't read my writing, and I can't write as fast as I think, but I can type close to it. So it's like, no, I can't do that.
Vic asks a question on our comments here. He says, have you ever read Love and Rockets by the Hernandez brothers?
No, I have not. I will have to put that on my list. Thank you, Vic. Thank you.
What are you reading these days, actually, Madeleine? And I don't just mean comics either.
Oh, I actually do a lot of audiobooks. Because it just fits better in my schedule, particularly when I'm at the gym doing the cardio. And I just finished Theodora Goss's trilogy of the Alchemist's Daughter and Monstrous, and it's set in the late 1800s, and these are a group of women who form what they call the Athena Club, and they are the descendants of Victor Frankenstein, Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, throw out any iconic figure, horror literary figure, and they are the daughters of them in some fashion. And it was absolutely delightful to listen to. Also, I'm a huge fan of Martha Wells's Murderbot Diaries, and I highly recommend listening to the audio version of that, because Kevin R. Free, who does the who's a voice actor who does it, is amazing and gives it intonation that you just, we're gonna eventually see Murderbot Diaries on Netflix. We have to.
Yeah, that would be great. I will listen to anything that Tim R. Reynolds reads in audiobook. I have hundreds of audiobooks. That's what I listen to when I'm doing my artwork. And he is just absolutely fantastic. I will listen to anything he reads.
Also, there was another series I listened to by Ken Liu, and it was the Dandelion Dynasty. And it's more of a silk punk. It has a whole Asian tenor to it. It's a huge series and huge world building, but it was amazing. So yeah, I'm a great appreciator of people who know how to world build without necessarily boring you to tears, because sometimes it can be a little overwhelming.
Roland asks here, what sort of lines do you draw between fiction and history?
I guess I never really thought about that. I think it depends on the story I want to tell. If it doesn't, none of my stories are dependent on any factual historical occurrences, so I don't need to worry about that. Everything works within. Oh, I see that. Meaning, how do you decide what history is a must keep and what is negotiable? Everything is negotiable. Everything is negotiable.
About history, it's written by somebody's perspective, and you can just assume there's another perspective out there. So
yes,
that's a good point. It's a very good point.
Yes,
history's written by the winners, is what they say.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And also in the Boston metaphysical universe, what I did is I took the War of 1812 as the divergent point. within American history. And at that point, before 1812, we were the United States of America. And then after the War of 1812, it started diverging from that until it became the great states of America. And the great houses started, essentially, it's in the Boston metaphysical universe is a parliamentary oligarchy.
I noticed that. I noticed that it's very hierarchical society, you know, very caste conscious.
Yes.
With the Irish apparently being on the lowest rung.
Yeah, they're one of the lowest rung. African Americans, other immigrants, also not high, but are not just. No, I'm not a successionist. But I've also written the first novel for what will be a trilogy of novels that are set in what I call the House Wars, which is the equivalent of the American Civil War. And that's the war between the houses of the North and the houses of the South. But we have paranormal elements and airships and all sorts of fun stuff like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like steampunk meets supernatural.
Yes.
I find that throwing in a caste system gives it an entirely separate context to the story. You're adding in a whole new layer to the storytelling by throwing in a caste system, which I find fascinating.
Well, it also enables organic conflict.
Right.
Yeah.
A complexity that's comes about naturally. Roberta, do you have any questions?
Well, I guess I was going to ask her about how she found her artist, but you kind of covered that. But I love the art in this series, and I'm looking forward to reading a lot more of it. I read one of them, and it's just a great story, and I like the type of paneling you do with the action. And I guess my question would be, how do you develop kind of a mood for the characters to learn about each other? It seems like, at least from the one I read, everything is an introduction, and it's just you find yourself interested in each of these people right off the bat. So I don't know how to tangibly ask how you create that. Is it because they're so well formed as personalities before you started this series?
It's a combination of that and also introducing them while they're doing their jobs. And so you see them in a proactive stance. Like in the very first issue, you see Samuel doing his job. And you meet Andrew, Caitlin's father. I don't want to give, for people who don't know what happens. And then Caitlin, of course, has to take his position. So she's actively interviewing for this position and showing what she can do. So we're seeing what each of these characters are capable of at that point in time. And then as the series goes on, obviously they change. Caitlin's abilities grow and change. They meet new people. Their situation changes. And so for me, it was, it's always been a lot of fun to play in this universe.
I see we had a Floramonte flyby.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
He does this every Wednesday.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take us back to kickstarting here for just a few minutes because I want to give you a chance to do a shout out. Nobody does a Kickstarter by themselves. They do, some do, but it's exhausting. I'm sure that during the course of the Kickstarter itself, you have a team that kind of helps you out. or is it just you and hubby?
It's just me.
Just you. Oh my God. More power to you. No wonder
just
you.
One a year. Okay, now it makes sense.
I mean, I run the Kickstarter. My poor husband has to deal with me doing the Kickstarter.
Well, then I guess he's part of a team.
He is definitely part of the team because, you know, the day we launched, it's like I told him, I said, when you come back from work, can you bring me some Starbucks because I'm going to have this thing at 5. And he comes home and he'd forgotten, which is fine. But he goes, yeah, I was too absorbed in like watching the Kickstarter because he always loves to see what I'm doing. And we talk about a lot about things and he'll review the page. I mean, he's looked at Kickstarter and Indiegogo pages enough that if something bothers him, he bumps on that he knows. And also, you know, we just have to get the logistics taken care of. Like, what are we eating for dinner tonight?
Oh, you're eating.
Yeah, I mean, just, you know, make it simple. It's like, okay, we can reheat this. It was like, okay, we have leftovers enough for the next 3 nights to get through the first 3 days, and then things will start evening out. But yeah, you do have to deal with logistics. But as far as managing the Kickstarter, it's on me.
You don't have like friends that'll kick in to up your social media presence, you know, and help.
Well, yes,
and stuff?
You know, yes and no, and that really comes down to the independent creator community, because all of us, when we launch something, particularly on Facebook, we know that, okay, I'm going to post something on Facebook, that it increases its algorithms if I do a like and put a little comment, and then and I do that for other people. People are sharing and they're liking and they're commenting, and then I comment on their comment, and that changes the algorithm. Same thing with Twitter. So in a sense, I do have, I guess, a street team, but it's this larger community where we do help each other out in those ways. And also, you know, I make arrangements with other people who are running Kickstarters at this time to do cross promotion. You know, I reach out to them, they reach out to me. I have a whole schedule of who's, you know, depending on when their campaigns are ending, when they're going to, you know, be part of an update. So in that sense, yes, but it's not a specific team. It's the larger community working together.
That's more or less what we do. BJ and Roland are the ones that actually run the Kickstarter, but they depend on the Silverline team to be the social media aspect. BJ does an awesome job of doing TikToks and setting up the ads, and it's up to us to share them and comment and spread them around in that aspect. But yeah, it can be very tiring and very rewarding as well. How long do you usually run your Kickstarters for?
Oh, just the 30 days, the standard 30 days.
So you do 30 days.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do anymore because I'm done.
We've been running ours for 17, so that might be something to think about.
Yeah, that would be tough. If I was like doing something small, yeah. Like say if it was for a special pin or something, yeah, I would do a shorter, but not for something like this.
That's something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, because yes, you hit the doldrums in the middle of the campaign. Always, but I've mitigated that by doing lots of these. I have 24 interviews scheduled for the next 30 days.
Wow.
Is that what exhausts you? That was actually something I was wondering.
Yeah, that's pretty exhausting by the end of the day, because I'm just talking a lot, and you know, in a couple weeks my voice will start going.
Okay.
Particularly when I have them either back to back or I have 2 in one day if I don't have some space in between. But just like what I do at cons, I highly recommend mint tea. Mint tea is very good for your throat. Ooh. And Marcia Chen over at Lady Mechanica, when we were having dinner after WonderCon last year, she said, no, it was WonderCon? No, it was San Diego. I said, they were staying in an Airbnb. I said, do you have any mint tea or green tea in here? She goes, yeah, we do. And I said, yeah, I have this after, every night after a con because it just soothes everything. She goes, really? And then she started doing it, and she told me later, she goes, yeah, that really works. So
Well, now I just picked up a new tip. So
yeah,
thank you.
I mean, after a con, I mean, I don't hit the parties. All I want to do is go to my room, eat cookies, watch HBO, and drink my mint tea. That's what I do. It's just like, leave me alone. I've been talking all day. And then I'll talk to my husband if he's not traveling with me. But that's it. But yes, the mint tea is a big help.
How did you manage to get into screenwriting?
I'd actually been doing that for many years prior to UCLA, and I went to the professional program at UCLA in screenwriting, which is sort of like a feeder system into the MFA program. And I just kept applying. I think I applied like 3 times before I finally got in. At the time, it was actually harder to get in there than into med school because there was only like 30 slots, and that's it. And no, it was great. I learned a lot. It was a terrific experience.
Do you have any plans to try and auction off the comic to a movie TV studio in the future?
Well, that depends. I'm in no hurry, and I will wait until I find the right partner. I'm in absolutely no rush. And if the right partner comes along, then we will go forward. I've been approached before, and it just hasn't
gelled.
Yeah, and it's not, or I just said, now this is not who I want to be working with. And,
yeah, we have a little experience with that. Years and years ago, somebody approached Roland to try to do Cat and Mouse, which is set in New Orleans. They wanted to move it to Los Angeles, change his character, change that character. Well, the whole point of it was that it's in New Orleans, and so he said no.
I mean, because New Orleans is a character.
Exactly, it's a character of its own.
Duh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really falls under the like, duh, no.
Part of the whole story is about being in New Orleans, so they wanted to move it to LA. It was like,
yeah, and LA can be a character too, and has been a lot of times, but it just wasn't Captain Mouse's character.
So Roland says, with your screenwriting background, what kind of scripts, kind of directions do you give to the artists?
I set the mood for them. And I do panel, and if they decide to blow up a panel, usually that's a good thing. I want to give them enough information so they have something to start with, but I don't want to hamper their own artistic ability. That's why I hired them, and things that are going on in their head. But I will, sometimes there are certain elements or characters that need to be in a panel, and that can't change because that's part of the development of the story. So I, try to make that clear and work with them. Do I do layouts? No, I write a pretty complete script.
Do you look at it from a cinematography point of view, though? We're looking down now.
I do it as like I'm the director.
Yes.
I write it as if I am the director.
That's good. Yeah.
So I guess just to flesh that out, are you saying you do a panel by panel description that's pretty heavy on description? Or do you do something like a general description of what you want to see and let the artist kind of interpret it?
No, I'm pretty specific what's in the panel because like I said, everything in the background tells a story as well. And the dialogue just adds another level to it. And so, yeah, I want to make sure that the things in the background are going on that the reader sees. So you see this multi-level thing going on. Well, our characters are talking about something else, but then over here, there's something else going on. And so I need to make sure I write that in the script so the artist knows that it has to be there. I do try to not to micromanage them.
Huh. How about if I just say the Big Easy from now on, Tommy? How about that? That'll work. Any more questions, Brent?
Well, you mentioned you watch a lot of HBO. What are you watching these days?
Well, I only watch HBO at the hotels because they have it. We don't have HBO at home.
Oh, okay.
It's a treat.
What we have Netflix and Amazon Prime. So I think right now on Amazon, Carnival Row is back on, so that's a lot of fun to watch on Amazon. We do like action stuff, so we had finished Reacher and a few other things.
That's a good one.
What we've discovered over the last few years, particularly during the pandemic, is we really enjoy some of the Korean dramas. Not so much the comedies, because I think we just don't get it. It just goes over our head. But there's I guess the second half of the season is going to be on March 10th, called The Glory. And it's intense, and the acting is amazing. It's a revenge story.
Oh, I love revenge stories.
Yeah,
it's
called The Glory. One thing about a lot of the Korean dramas is that they usually have really hokey titles that are misleading. And I think the translation misses something in English, that it implies something else in Korean, and we don't necessarily get it.
Different culture.
But
reference.
yeah, there was another one called My Hollow Love, HOLO, as like in a holograph, which sounds like it's supposed to be a comedy but it turned out to be a murder mystery that was really good. And it's like, why do you call it? Yeah. And then we love the period pieces. Highly recommend Mr. Sunshine.
Ooh, okay. I'm gonna have to look at one. I love period pieces too.
Yeah, I am not a romance or chick flick fan myself. I don't mind having romance within the story, but not the main line of the story. Mr. Sunshine kind of does. It's so you'll be in tears at the end of it. It just so good. But it is interesting in the period pieces. You'll notice that the leads, they'll never kiss. They'll spend like a full minute like gazing at each other
lovingly into each other's eyes.
Lovingly. You will see leads kiss in more modern day stories, but never in the period pieces. So you almost have to laugh whenever you see okay, here comes the staring moment. About 30 seconds to a minute, this goes on, and then they go on. But
speaking of romance, and I haven't gotten through I've gotten through the first 6 issues of your book, and I love them, and I need to get the other graphic novels. But is there romance anywhere?
It's coming.
So there is some coming. Okay, tease us.
It's coming. We're building the foundation.
Ah, okay.
We're building the foundation.
You're playing the long
Good to know.
And do we know between who?
I'm not going to give that away.
What are you thinking, Barb?
I know.
Of course she won't say.
Yeah, that's a good teaser. Well, dang it. Okay. Well, we're almost coming to the end of our time here. Does anybody have any more questions?
Is there anything you want to tell the audience, Madeleine?
Yes.
Then please contribute to the pledge to the Kickstarter, which is going on right now. We launched today. It is a brand new 4-issue miniseries, and as you can see, we're getting there. Called Mysterious Pikes Peak, where I bring the team to Tesla's experimental station in Colorado Springs, which actually did exist. That's a real thing. And he was there for a while working on wireless technology. And you're looking at Angela Wu's fabulous. That's the main cover
It's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
And she did issue 2, and then we have the 2 variants, and we also have the variants in metal as well, limited quantities. But there's digital awards, there's physical rewards, there's all sorts of fun stuff that should meet anybody's budget. And that's Elizabeth's first 3 pages that she did.
So your elevator pitch is the team go to Tesla's lab in Colorado.
Yeah,
And-
the overall, for those who are brand new to the series, it's about an ex-Pinkerton detective, a spirit photographer, and a genius scientist who battles supernatural forces in late 1800s Boston. And then as we move on and develop the story, we do bring on another team member in Alma, but that's, like I mentioned, the second sequel, The
Is that
Spirit of
Alma?
Rebellion.
And I'm assuming those aren't the mountains of Boston.
No, they are in Colorado Springs.
Okay. Yeah, that's really pretty.
It is. The art is just fantastic.
Mhm.
And we have the audio drama in both CD and digital downloads.
Really? Audio
Yes.
drama. Oh, tell
I
us
love
a little
that
bit about
idea.
that.
What is that?
It's that's a long story, but to keep it short, it just features Samuel, Caitlin, and Granville in an earlier case. This was also adapted from what do I call it? An episode that I had written at UCLA. And it's an 8-episode drama that includes a full cast, special effects, and original music. It's about 4 hours long, and it includes commentary.
Holy
And-
cow.
And the story is about when a ghost ship sails into Boston Harbor, killing anyone who boards her. Samuel, Caitlin, and Granville must solve the mystery as to why it has appeared before anyone else dies.
And you see, that is a perfect stretch goal because it's easy, doesn't cost a lot, doesn't weigh a lot to ship.
Yeah, actually, it's not a stretch goal. It's available in a couple of the reward tiers. And I had a couple people come to me and say, like, can I do it as an add-on? Usually I do that in backer kit,
Mhm.
the CD as an add-on. But I'm going to go see here because I had a couple of requests that I have to go figure out how I'm going to go do.
Okay. Well, we are up. Our time is up for the evening, but it has been fascinating talking to you, Madeleine. I've liked picking your brain, and I like the fact that you're so good at what you do, and your stories speak for themselves. So it's no wonder that you've got such a great following. And I encourage everybody out there who's listening to this to jump on this Kickstarter. And if you don't have the back issues, buy them. I highly recommend them.
Yeah, we do have for the next, I guess, 40 hours, a special reward tier, an early bird for issues 1 and 2. But yes, if you're new to the series, you can get a complete digital of the comics of Volume 1, Volume 2, and the 2 issues of Mystery at Pikes Peak, or you can get the physical copies.
Thank you for being with us this evening, Madeleine.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time.
And as we say when we close out, are you guys ready?
Make
mine Silverline.
I'm April Hunter. Make mine Silverline.
All right.